Hello everyone, my name is Kim Rubenstein and I'm really delighted to be recording this to be part of the WOW Festival weekend. I'm coming to you as co-director of the 50/50 by 2030 Foundation at the University of Canberra. And so the idea came to me because this was still in the early days when there was still travel around the country, that perhaps we could bring everyone to Canberra who would otherwise have been going to New York. And so very quickly we were able to organise for Friday the 13th of March for there to be a special Commission for the Status of Women event in Canberra where all the significant individuals came to Canberra. In fact, when we look back, that was the last time that there would be any physical meeting. And indeed, in reflecting on it, we knew that we couldn't shake hands, but that was about all that there was on the public health agenda in relation to stopping the spread of COVID. It was the fact that we were able as a network to connect as soon as the COVID pandemic's effects were becoming clearer and clearer, to connect with other individuals, organisations, policy makers in terms of gender equity, to start talking and conversing with one another as to how we should respond and encourage policy discussion about the gendered impacts of COVID-19. Indeed, the mantra at the time was that COVID didn't discriminate. And of course, the virus doesn't discriminate. But the discrimination that we see in society is because of the existing inequalities that are already in place. And so the impact of COVID has been different on different sectors of society. And so what we did is we set up with a group of other activists and policymakers and academics, a group that we've called the Snap Forward Feminist Policy Framework, the SFN, which is working to ensure that there's a gender-responsive COVID-19 recovery, something that we're calling Snap Forward rather than back, or an equality gender recovery. And in terms of where those ideas go, of course, there's public discourse and public campaigning. But interestingly, within the Australian parliamentary framework, a special Senate COVID-19 committee has been established. And our Snap Forward Policy, Feminist Policy Framework, SFN framework, developed a 10-point plan, which is what I'm here to present to you today, and to highlight how a gender-responsive approach to moving at our recovery post-COVID-19 is absolutely essential. So let me take you through those 10 points, which you'll be able to see on a slide that I believe is going to be shown. The first, which is totally consistent with our foundation's objectives, all of them of course are, but this sits strongly with our central focus, which is that in order to recover well and properly, we need 50/50 in terms of leadership and decision making. Women and men must be equally represented at all key decision making tables. Second, we need to invest in gendered data. What gets counted counts. Government really must invest in gender data to measure how the policy impacts of their policy impacts differently on men and women. More work needs to be done in this area, and it's something that the activists and academics have been recommending for years. That data is important in order to develop gender-responsive budgeting. We need to stop the gender bias in public policy. The fourth recommendation is that we need to strengthen social protections for women. There needs to be a permanent increase in terms of the current economic response to the job seeker allowance. Fifth, and this is so crucial, that childcare be accessible, affordable and universal. When we're talking about 50/50 in the public sphere, when we're talking about the next point, number 6, the increase in women's workforce participation, that can only be possible if we as a society place greater attention on accessible, affordable childcare. Seventh, and this is a pandemic of its own that really must be concentrated on, is that we need to increase investment in domestic violence protection and services. That is absolutely fundamental, COVID or not. Eighth, we have to protect women's health services, that any future economic recovery must build in adequate safeguards for sexual and reproductive health. Ninth, we need to strengthen the investment in social and public housing. Australia's increasing homelessness crisis dramatically impacts older women. And 10th, we need to think of this crisis in the context of climate resilience. We must increase women's participation in STEM education and in STEM jobs. Each of these aspects of the response relate back to the undeniable reality that women's lived experience is fundamental to be built into any recovery post-COVID. And so finally, the three key areas that I want to finish off with that relate to everything that the 50/50 by 2030 Foundation is working towards is the notion that we must have a diversity of participation in decision making. Women must be equally represented, and the diversity of women's experience must be equally represented in our leadership and decision making forums. There must be gender responsive budgeting informed by the collection of better gender disaggregated data to ensure that the economic step forward supports an equal recovery. And finally, there is the undeniable reality, as the Prime Minister and himself said, that childcare is an essential service. It's why they introduced universal childcare as soon as they introduced the measures to cope with COVID. Those measures reflect an undeniable reality that childcare is essential for an equality of recovery. These are measures that we hope you will take on board and encourage others to discuss as we move forward post-COVID-19 to ensure that we snap forward, not back, and that there's a gender equal recovery. Thank you very much from the 50/50 by 2030 Foundation.